Hello, everyone. Welcome to Limbo. My name is João, and today I have the pleasure to share the conversation I had a couple of months ago with my friend Greigori. So, Greigori was one of these people that I met on Twitter kind of by chance. He had like this thread asking for people to send him pictures that he could basically turn into cartoons. And I did. I sent a picture of my girlfriend, and she absolutely loved it. He basically made all of the people based on a specific animal, which he will tell you all about during our conversation. And ever since then, we kind of started to follow each other. We became mutuals on Twitter and had like this continuous conversation. And so when I was revamping Limbo, I was like, I really, really want to have Gregory on. And this is why a lot of the times you meet people that are in the craft and they're already pretty advanced, and you can either have like those people that are already pretty advanced in a specific craft, or they're just starting off and they're just passionate about it but extremely amateurs. And it's hard to find people that are in the middle, where it's like they're not making their living merely exclusively out of that craft, but they're also no longer amateurs. And Gregory sits perfectly in there. He has two books out, which you should definitely check out. The links are in the description. Comic books, I mean. And we talked about how that passion emerged in his life, all of the different works, what his approach, what are some of the like obstacles that you need to overcome in order to become a comic book artist, what his inspirations are. We also talked about a little bit more on the personal side. We talked about his relationship with food. He's a foodie much like me, so we ended up talking about that, about cooking as a way of serving other people and as a love language. We talked about a bunch of different things that I think you're going to enjoy. So the thing that I'll ask you though is, listen to the podcast and then go follow Gregory on social media. Check his books; they are very good, very funny. So make sure that you do that. Okay. Now, before you go into the conversation, just a real quick mention of our sponsors, the Socratic Experience, the school where I work on. We're basically trying to change education, and we're using the Socratic method to do that. So if you're interested in alternative education, please make sure that you check us out at thesocraticexperience.com. To the restaurant Limbo in Lisbon, which gave name to this podcast. If you ever go to Lisbon, search for a Limbo restaurant, and if you're there, just tell them that João, his ex-neighbor, sent you there. And that's it. I hope you really enjoyed the conversation with Gregory, and if you do, please subscribe, leave a like, comment, and a review on your favorite podcast platform. I'll see you in the next episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Limbo. Today, I have with me Gregory. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Now, I just had that realization that okay, so it's Gregory, is right?
Yeah, it's Gregory. Yeah,
But
and it's a pen name actually, but my
mm,
name is spelled Gregory, which is the classic way.
the classic way, because
Gregory.
I was about to
Yeah.
say your name, and I was like, well, maybe I've been calling him the wrong name all of this time. But hopefully that wasn't the case. Gregory, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Ah, totally fine. Okay, so I guess that I want to start with your name actually. Like, is like the pen name? Is that like, was there like a specific reason why you changed the spelling on it, or was it just the available
Yeah,
name?
yeah. I mean, first of all, it comes from a friend like who somehow decided to change the way my name is written, just for fun. This is a nickname that she gave me, and I just wanted to have like a kind of like to divide my life as a comic artist
Hmm.
with my life, my regular life, because I'm sorry, from my actual work. So just wanted to have those lives separate. So yeah,
Yeah, like it's a way to facilitate that like mental division of I'm Gregory, now I'm Gregory, or something like that.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
Perfect. Okay, so you just mentioned comics. That's actually a big part of what we're going to talk about. Comics, food, Twitter. But I want to start with. So we met on Twitter, of course, and in your bio you have something that says "Seeker of Wholesomeness." And I would love for you to explain to me what a seeker of wholesomeness is.
So what it means is that when I'm on the internet, I usually try to find content that will be more comforting in general, nice, kind, joyful. So that's what I usually look for when I'm on the internet.
Yeah.
It's also like a response to I've seen, so I feel like a lot of things I'll post on the internet are really kind of sad, gloomy, and very negative usually. So that was kind of my response to that. So I try to like find all the good things there are
Yeah.
on Twitter and all the other social media.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's such a cool word. A couple. I remember that a couple of years ago, I had this theory that if people use the word awesomeness, joy, and wonder, like those three words were like this divine trinity, where you would find interesting and fun people to hang around because those are like the. I think that if you're optimizing for that, your life will be. You'll definitely be a person that I want to hang out to with. So that's great. Is there like and as you're saying, like I guess that the internet has this there's this part of the internet that I would say is the bigger part, that's actually focused a lot on negative things and on, as you were saying, like sad things, gloomy things, or sometimes even violent things. Uh,
Hmm.
like where did it come from, that conscious decision of trying to fight or to swim against the current in that sense and trying to find like the good things in the internet?
I guess it also comes from my comics as well, because I've noticed that a lot of books that are being published in the past couple of years or more, they follow this kind of trend where like you talk about a lot of serious stuff. And I feel like there's less and less fewer books and fewer content that actually like gives people joy in general. So that's why I was trying to do that. And you're one of the people I found on Twitter too that struck me as being wholesome as well. So
Thank you.
so yeah, no, yeah, you're welcome. But yeah, that's yeah. So that was yeah mainly due to like what I've seen, like not only in the internet but also like when I was reading books.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Hmm.
Thank you. So let's get into comics. And so I have this weird relationship with comics, because for I don't know, from since I was able to read until probably like sixth grade, I would say that 95% of the books that I was reading were comics. Like those Disney comics with Scrooge McDuck and Donald and Goofy and all that. Like my dad had like this huge collection of it, and we just kept buying it and reading it. Um, and we also had read like Asterix and Obelix, the French one, and Lucky Luke, a bunch of them. And so I really, really enjoyed it. And then I dramatically stopped until I was much older when I discovered like manga, and that made me like went back to comics. But I have a deep interest and passion about the genre. So I guess that my first question is, what made you get into comics? Like, why comics and not anything else?
So I got into comics in 2018 actually. So I actually didn't read that many comics when I was growing up.
Hmm.
It really happened not too long ago, and in Quebec. So I live in Montreal, and there's a really nice comic scene in Quebec with like they have this like special style which is more like a lot of like auto fiction. So like a lot of day to day
Hmm.
recollection of events. So like it would be like kind of like cute and like autobiographical. And usually like the style of drawing would be pretty simple as well. So like actually like I draw pretty like simply as well. And it kind of scared me because I didn't really know how to draw either
Hmm.
before 2018. So the reason why that how I got into it was actually reading, consuming all the books that were published here locally.
Okay.
And they really inspired me. There's one book in particular by a comic artist called Vian. She's a Quebec comic artist, and she has this like essay comic about art in general.
Okay.
And in that book kind of made me want to make comics myself, just because it was like almost telling you not to care much about, quality
Hmm.
and just go ahead and do it.
Yeah. Is
Yeah.
it so? So what was it about like comics as a form? Because I definitely believe that I can read books telling, like if you're doing some kind of art, like do it, and like forget about quality in the beginning. And I'm imagining myself reading that book, completely agreeing with the message, but I still wouldn't go in and start drawing comics. So what about the specific thing or the specific genre that attracted you? Just the overall scene, and because that was what was known, or was there anything else?
Um, I guess it's a really great way to express yourself because it's at the same time drawing and at the same time storytelling. It's like very close to cinema actually because you're actually drawing full scenes and emotions on paper. I think it's just, and I think one of the main things that really attracted me in this form is really how to capture emotions on paper. Because when you read a book, right, you're not you have to kind of like imagine how the scenery looks like and how people are acting and how people are feeling. Whereas when you're drawing comics, you can actually draw it in addition to writing it.
Hmm.
So I guess that's why it really interested me in the first place.
Hmm.
And at that time when I started making comics, it was like I was going through a breakup and I just really felt relief and comfort just drawing comics during that time. So it's just like it was during a time where I was trying different activities, and that one just stuck with me since.
Okay.
Yeah.
So walk me through that process. Like 2018, like you read that book, you decide, okay, I'm going to start drawing comics. Had you, like, what was your drawing experience besides like knowing? Did you had any kind of experience in, I don't know, a class or something like that, or you just purely just going and starting to draw different things?
Yeah, so I took a class. So there's a comics workshop that's pretty popular in Montreal,
Okay.
and that many comic artists actually did, including the one I really like. So I just signed up for it. It's open to the public. It's a workshop, a 3 hour long workshop every week for about 3 months.
Okay.
And then so you go in, it's a class, like they teach you. So my comics instructor, he would usually come into class. The first 2 hours would be just teaching material or how to like draw a storyboard, for example, or giving examples of comics he liked. And then the last hour would just be us drawing and trying to come up with a story.
Hmm.
And at the end of that workshop, so after the 3 month long workshop, we would always publish an anthology. And so it kind of pushes you to have a project and to like just do it
Yeah.
from start to finish because you have a deadline and for the book, right? So at the end. And so yeah, I did that. And I went in with like zero experience in drawing because I actually didn't draw at all before starting to do comics in 2018.
Yeah.
And it was pretty interesting because you're kind of surrounded with a lot of people who all want to make comics and many of them have drawing experience
Mm-hmm.
and you can't help but compare yourself with other people.
Yeah.
So I did go through like all this like questioning myself why I was there and what I was doing there and like just not being happy with how I drew, even though like I knew it wasn't like uh, essential. But yeah, that's how I started.
Yeah, so I'm always interested in that because no matter like the size or the fame of a creator, I feel like a lot of us go through that process of where you're either comparing yourself or you're thinking about, well, you're having like these doubts, and as you were saying, like you're someone that never draw. Here you are in a comic course with people that have a lot of drawing experience, and you're
Hmm.
having all of those questions through your mind. And I guess that, I mean, the answer was like, let's publish, because you are, you publish a book, you're getting ready for the next one, and of course we'll talk about that. But how were you able to like process all of that? So if someone is right now, they're sitting in a workshop with other comics, people that are used to drawing, they haven't drawn in a long time. They're like, okay, what am I doing here? Like, what would your advice be to someone in that same position?
It's a very difficult question because I think it's just a matter of like just pushing yourself, just doing it, reminding yourself that you're doing it for yourself first. And then, yeah, just remind yourself that you're doing it for yourself first, and then just keep going because it's okay. Like, I mean, drawing, like your drawing, your style of drawing is gonna evolve with time. Like, it might start off as being not too great, and you might not be satisfied with the way you draw, but with time, it will improve, and it will only improve if you do it. So,
Yeah, like
yeah, I mean, mhm.
it's about focusing on the fact that it's about yourself first, and then as you're saying, like the practice, because like I would bet that your first comic isn't as good as your 100th comic or 1,000th comic, right?
Oh, definitely not. Yeah. Yeah, and
Mm,
there's a fascinating book that was done by Lewis Trondheim. It's called, I think it's Lapino et les carottes de la Patagonie, and it's a 500 page book from this artist who claims that he didn't know how to draw at the beginning, and you
okay.
see how his style evolves from the first page to the 500th page. And
Wow.
it's very fascinating. And so that person was like, okay, I'm just gonna do a 500 page book. I have never drawn before, but let's do it. And it's one of the better selling books I out there, I think. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would really we definitely need to add that to the links in the description so people can go and check it out. Okay, so walk me through your process. So in 2018, you're struggling with all of that. Now here you are, two different books about comics. Like tell me your hero's journey around drawing comics.
So 2018, I signed up for that workshop, which we've talked about. And then the anthology came out, and then I did the workshop two more times actually after that, because you can take it again. It's the same material, but I found that it was very motivating in the sense that I had a deadline and I had to
Mm,
publish a story for that anthology every time. So did that two more times, and then I started doing like a lot of my comics on my own. I thought I was ready to just publish them myself. So what I've been doing since is, yeah, self-publishing a bunch of books, uh, participating in festivals. There are two big festivals in Montreal, which are open to independent artists.
wow.
One is Exposine. It's an alternative comic zine festival that happens every fall. And the other one is the Montreal Comic Arts Festival, and that's a festival that happens every spring. They close a whole street in Montreal, and it's like
Wow.
hundreds of exhibitors. So I've been doing those two for at least 2, 3 years now. And those are really great places too, because there you get to meet other artists as well. Yeah, you get to promote your work, and you get to meet other people who do the same thing as you do.
Yeah. Which
Hmm.
is great. Which is great. Okay, so let's go into your books. You have Little Assholes. I think that was the type of the
Yeah,
title of your first one,
yeah,
right?
I have it right here. It's right there.
Oh, awesome! That's great. And
Yeah.
what's the name of the second one?
So the second one is called Flavorsome Stories.
Okay.
In French, it's Victoire à volonté. I have a little zine here. Zines are actually small publications, so
Okay.
it's a cool name for essentially a small book. As you can see,
Okay.
it's very thin.
Yeah.
Um, and so that new book is short stories inspired by food. And
Okay.
that one I have over here is called Flavorsome Stories from Mauritius.
Hmm.
And those are short stories about the food I grew up with.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so before you go into that, is the second book also done with a particular type of character, or a
Yes.
particular type of? Okay, so let's get into that. So you have a
Okay.
very particular style, and just to explain to everyone listening how I met you, it was on Twitter, of
Hmm.
course. I was following you, and someone, I think it was Visakan, he shared like a version of him. think it was him, like draw it as if he was this water animal, and basically it was tied to a thread where you were offering to draw people. Like you could send pictures to people. You could send your pictures, and you would draw them as a particular animal, the axolotl. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, axolotl.
Axolotl.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So I guess
Yeah.
my yeah, axolotl is a completely different animal. Sorry. Okay, but my biology, like animals, are not my strong suit. But my question is, okay, so how did you come up with that idea?
Um, Actually, I have no idea. Like, it's it's so funny because like I was because the first time I ever drew axolotls was for my boyfriend. That was my way of like just representing us. I would draw myself, I would draw him, and I would just randomly draw the axolotls just for fun, just like cute notes I would send him, and just like maybe hide on his laptop before he woke up,
Cute.
and so on. And I would so it started from there where I was starting to try and draw axolotl forms of other people, and I started drawing my friends in that character form as well.
Yeah.
And then it was really at the beginning of like when I was on Twitter, so just when I was starting to post a bit more frequently. And
Mm-hmm.
then I just came up with this idea at some point. I was like, huh, how about I drew other people other than my boyfriend and my friends? So that's how I started it. And I published that thread, which became really great because then I was able to draw like hundreds of other people in
Yeah.
axolotl.
Okay, so you there's this whole book with characters designed based on this animal, and you don't know like why you picked that animal. Like that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so why I picked that animal? I guess like deep down, just really liked the animal to start with. I thought it was like, especially like the leucistic kind, because there are different kinds of axolotls. Like there are those that are raised in the wild, not raised in the wild, or those that live in the wild, and those that are raised in labs. And the ones that are raised in labs have this always this like cute expression with like this
With
giant
this little
smile.
smile. Yeah.
Yeah. And also it's used as inspiration for a bunch of Pokemon as well.
It is.
Yeah. Like Wooper and Mudkip, like those are, yeah, inspired
Yeah.
by the Axolotl as well. So I like those Pokemon as well. So I guess it comes from there too. Like just deep down, I was like, oh wow, like I love this animal. So how about I just transform myself into this?
Yeah, no, that's such interesting because the first time that I saw it, I was like, "Oh, this is Boople." Like, I immediately I went to the Pokemon. And I was like,
Mhm.
Is he drawing like the Pokemon version of it? What was it?" And then realizing that it was actually the animal, and you were drawing based on the animal. That's just very interesting. Okay, so let's go into your books. Tell the audience a little bit about. Let's start with Little Assholes. Like tell us a little bit about what the book is about. What were some of your sources of inspiration? Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's a collection of short comics. So each comic is 1 to 4, 6 pages long, and they are all inspired by what's happening in my life. So it's very like slice of life, um, and definitely like inspired by since I mentioned like all the Quebec artists I follow, like they often post comics that are similar on their social media, and it's always like just cute like funny moments of their lives, just day to day, like everything that can happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Little Hustle is about, and it was also like a way for me to get myself out there and publish my first book because I was starting to post short comics on Instagram, and then there was a festival coming up, and I really wanted to have something to sell. So I decided to like just take all the comics I had made on Instagram and make a few new ones and just put
Oh
them in
yeah,
a book. Yeah.
smart,
Hmm.
smart. And so, and there's basically a bunch of short stories about little assholes that happen.
Hmm.
Can you tell me? It's like I if I'm not mistaken, the book was like 60, 70, 80 pages long. How long was it?
Yeah,
60
60,
something,
70.
right? exactly. And like out of all of those comics, is there like what's your favorite one?
Ooh, I think I know which one now. I think it's called. Oh yeah, it's called Dopamine. Um,
Dopamine?
yeah, I'll just show it
Let's see if
quickly.
I,
That one. So it's about me posting my comics on online and not getting any attention for them. And then at some point, I receive a like, and the like is actually a like from a bot.
yeah.
And the the funny thing about this comic is that even though it's a bot, my character is actually pretty happy that he got a like from a bot.
Yeah.
And it's also like one of the first comics I posted online that got some kind of attention. So it kind of like stayed with me because I was like, oh wow, I can actually do something and what I'm doing is actually interesting enough for people to like it.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
so I was trying to share it to live stream it, but I'm having some technical difficulties, so I will find a way to then introduce it somewhere in the video.
that's good.
But
Yeah.
let me but because that's the thing about like talking about like a form of art is like when you're talking with artists. I was a musician for a while, and I did like a series of interviews with musicians. It was really hard to do it without them having access to their instrument, because sometimes you're trying to describe something. And it's like, well, how can I put into words a thing that I'm listening in my head through music, right? And the same thing with comics. It's like we can talk about it, but it's way easier if we're actually going through the comics and you're looking at them. So I'll try to find a way to introduce them as we talk.
Yeah.
But one of the questions that I had was like, so let's take the dopamine example. What was the process? Like, how did you come up with the idea? And like I said, is it something that the asshole happened and you were like, I'm going to make a comic about that, or was it you sitting and thinking, okay, so what do I want to draw today? Like, what was your process of doing
Mhm.
that particular book?
It was I think for that particular comic, it was more like how I was feeling at the time. Like I had finally started. I had done my two workshops, my three workshops, and I was just there on my own and trying to see if I could, start publishing comics online. And at the time, I didn't have that many followers. I didn't have that many likes on my comics, so it was just me thinking like, am I really happy doing this? And
Hmm.
then it just gave me sufficient inspiration to write it. So I kind of use it as a tool to remind myself that, I'm first of all doing it for myself and trying to have fun with it. But yeah, it's essentially how I was feeling at the time. It was the very beginning of my comics journey, right? So,
Yeah. How about all like how about all of the others, or I can pick a random one if you want to. Like, is that
mhm.
something that like are you hyper aware of what's happening in your life and taking notes on? Oh, okay, this might be an interesting comic, or is it something that once again you know that you need to draw and you just try and come up with a situation in order to actually finish the comic?
Yeah, so it would be the first case. So I would always, I would say most of my stories come from inspiration that just comes. I don't really sit down and try to think and make myself do it. I've tried a couple times, but they don't always generate the best stories. So it's just letting myself be open to whatever's happening to me, right? So whenever I take a walk, for example, if something interesting happens, and I'll just remember it, and sometimes it will go further and get transformed into a comic,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes not. I've taken notes a couple times. So whenever there's something interesting that happens to me during my day, I would take notes, but not, I don't do it regularly. Like
Okay.
if I really want to like think about it later, then I will do it, but not always. So it would just come up. And I guess my way of dealing with this is just that whenever there's something sufficiently interesting that happens to me, then I'll just do it right away. I'll just start drawing right away.
Okay. And so
Mm-hmm.
what happens? Like something happens, and because I'm always fascinated by the fact that if you're writing a story using just words, like you can go for how many pages you want to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're making a painting, you have to like pick one scene. But the comic books, specifically the kind of comics that you write, these are usually like like between 4 6 squares. I don't know the technical term, sorry. And it's like, how do you decide where you're going to start and what goes into each frame?
Um, I would usually have the beginning and the ending in mind already whenever I have inspiration for a
Got it.
story. The most difficult part is finding how to connect the two. Um,
Mm,
and so yeah, and you can go like you can develop the story as much as you want. But for me, like since I was posting mostly on Instagram, and Instagram is pretty limited in the number of pages you can put on,
mm-hmm.
um, I would usually try to limit it to, as you mentioned, 4 to 6 panels.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so so yeah, that's how I usually go by. I know the start, I know the ending, and then I try to connect the two.
got it.
Mm.
And would you say that you find yourself more often in a position of, okay, I have way too many drawings for this small space, like the story is way too long and I have to condense it, or the opposite, like, okay, I mean, I have the story, but it's like just 2 panels, and so somehow need to expand it a little bit.
Mhm. It's usually I have too much to say and I have to
Okay.
condense
Okay.
a
So how do
lot.
you do that?
Mm, it takes a lot of trial and error. I think I would usually try and draw as how do I do that? It's really tricky. Sometimes I end up with more than 2 panels. Like let's say I'm trying to make a 4 panel comic. Uh, the beginning and ending are drawn, and I'm trying to connect the two. Yeah, I would sometimes have more than 2 drawings between the two. So it's just like making sure that everything that I'm doing, everything that I'm drawing in between, is that really essential? Is that really important to get to the ending point? So yeah, I would do rough sketches usually, and then make my boyfriend read them, see if he thinks that it's really that important to include all this information, and then condense. So, but it's there's no really like specific recipe. Like sometimes it works more easily than others. It's yeah, I can't know what to say.
Yeah, no, that's great. So tell me
Yeah.
about tell me about the new book. Why food?
Oh, why food? Because it really inspired me to like talk about things. Why food? Because it brings a lot of memories.
Mm,
So I talk a lot about the food from Mauritius, which is where I grew up,
mm-hmm,
and a lot of that food is just stayed with me, even though I haven't been living there since 2010. And they just remind me a lot of, what my family went through when they were there, what I went through in Mauritius growing up, and it just helped me really like embrace like my culture.
mm,
So it yeah, it just like I feel like it's like very like it generates a lot of memories, right? When you talk about specific food, your favorite food, like it just reminded me of like who prepared it for me, and also why. It just made me like think why I wanted people to also taste the food that I like.
mm.
So there's a lot of nostalgia in the new book. Nostalgia because of how happy and nostalgic it makes me feel to like think about all the food I grew up with.
Interesting. Is there any particular reason why food is the metric that you're looking for. Not that you're looking for, but like that happens to resonate. Like I'll give you an example, and the reason why I'm asking this is because I have the same thing. Like even recently, I was talking with my girlfriend, and we were talking
Mm-hmm.
about like the fact that her grandmother had passed away, and there was a particular dish that she was the only one that used to do, and like and you come to this realization of, oh, okay, I'll never be able to try that dish,
Do the same,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, and I was talking about my own grandmother. She's still alive, but she can no longer cook, and I was thinking about the fact that I spent a lot of time with her, and like there were so many things that I tried for so long and were like the flavors of me growing up that I will never be able to like this again. So I totally resonate with the idea of food being like something that really connects you deeply with the people around you. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why. Like I don't know why I food was the thing that resonated with me. There's people that resonate with a bunch of different things, but I see that clearly to you as well. Do you have any insight on why food and not anything else?
Well, I like to cook, right? So it comes from my personality
Got
itself.
it.
And you did mention about like all those lost recipes. Like my a lot of Mauritian cuisine don't have accurate recipes actually.
Yeah,
They all from like it's your grandma's recipe, and no one else
exactly.
knows how to do it as well as she did, right? I do actually have a story about that about Chinese Mauritian cakes and the way
Okay.
that my grandmothers used to make them. Uh, and I do mention in that comic that yeah, I'm just gonna try and make those cakes as well as they made them, but I don't have any recipes, right? I'd never noted
Yeah,
down the recipes while they were making them.
yeah,
Um, and why food and not anything else? It's I guess it's like very like it's a big part of my life. So I love cooking. You've seen that on my Twitter,
yeah,
I think.
yeah,
Um, so it takes a lot of time during my day because yeah, I cook for myself usually.
yeah. So okay, so let's put a pause on comics and go into food for a little bit.
Hmm.
I've always enjoyed eating. And for a while, I always thought that okay, maybe I would like to start cooking, but I was very bad at it. And now recently, when I moved in with my girlfriend, I decided that it was time for me to actually like I could I'm okay. I could like do a steak and rice for the rest of my life and I would be happy. But I decided to, like try and dive a little bit more into cooking because once again, like when I think about the best moments of my life, a lot of them involve food and wine and people around me. Like I think that the meal is one of the it's a transcendental experience. If you're having like a good meal with the people that you love and care about, like that's to me that's like the top one experience that you might have. But I guess that yeah. So I decided to start into cooking, and I
Hmm.
found it that it's extremely therapeutic for me. Uh,
Yes,
and do you resonate with that? Well, why do you think
I
that?
do. Yeah. Mhm.
Why is it therapeutic to you?
Um, it calms me down. And also like you get a big sense of accomplishment when you're done cooking. So whenever I make a really nice meal, I'm just very happy because I know I made it myself. I'm just satisfied.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's also at least to me, it's also like a love language, right? It's like like I love the fact that I can cook. First of all, it helps me stay in the present, because when you're cooking, it's like at least to me, there's two options. One of them is I'm either trying a new recipe, and so I'm extremely focused on making sure that everything goes according to plan, or is it
Hmm.
or it's something that doesn't need a recipe, and so my mind just wanders, and it feels like it's like my body is doing the things, but I'm free to think about something else other than what do I need to do for work? Who am I going to record a podcast today? What's happening there? What's happening there? So both of those options like really calm me down and help me. But also there's an element of when you finish, there's definitely what you said where you feel like, oh, okay, I made this. Like I remember the first time that I made osobuku, like I finished that after like 3 or 4 hours in the oven. We took it out, we
Hmm.
tried it, and I was like, damn, I made this. Crazy. And it's great. But there's also like this other part of the experience that goes into, well, sharing it with others and saying, well, try
Yes.
this, I made it, right? And I feel like that's one of the most beautiful aspects of cooking.
Hmm. Yeah, I love cooking for friends. Like, I love hosting dinners. So I do that too. And you mentioned like the focus of following a recipe, and um, one of the first things I made uh, was eclairs. So baking is actually a big part of my life. Yeah, I love
Wow.
baking. And you know how for baking you really need to follow the recipe. If you don't follow the recipe, things
Yeah.
can turn out not as you expected. So you have to stay focused. I'm pretty meticulous too when I bake, so I try to like make it as perfect as I can, and just that helps me like stay grounded actually and stay and be calm. I
Yeah.
just really like just being meticulous with things.
Yeah, I'm not ready to go into baking. You're clearly ahead of me because I panic just thinking about doing like meals. That's fine. Some entries as well, like desserts and baking. God no, I'm not ready for that. Uh, because funnily enough, like my approach, like being extremely meticulous is something that I'm not used to. So following a recipe, it's usually like people like my girlfriend and my friends, like they find it weird because I'm in this mental state of I need to follow everything and I need to make sure that every like if this says that these are six like bits of garlic, I'll have six and not seven and not eight. Like and in everything in my life, I'm exactly the opposite. I'm completely free. Well, if it will, we'll do it like complete more way more like improvising aspect of life, but
Yeah.
like in cooking I'm like extremely focused, and I think that like baking is a different level of meticulous, and I'm not ready to go there yet.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny because like my mom actually is the kind of person who can't follow a recipe. So whenever she baked in the past, uh, they often turn out good, but not always. And
Yeah,
I always knew when she followed the recipe or not, just based on how it turned out.
yeah, you're like this time you didn't like
No.
nope, I can see it. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. God. Okay, so how, when did you start to get into cooking?
So yeah, I mentioned eclairs, and I think I made my first eclairs when I was 14, I think.
Wow, so that's
Yeah, and that came from just a desire of like, oh, there was a recipe in the newspaper for eclairs, and I tried it, and then turned out the recipe wasn't good. And I started like looking for other recipes on the internet, found one that worked, and then it actually worked, and that became my specialty because I was like, oh, I know how to make eclairs now.
wow, and that's a fancy
Yeah,
recipe to start, Gregory. You were
it
like,
is
well,
a very fancy recipe to start. I
people,
agree.
if you go and say, well, my number one dish is eclairs, people are like, damn, I imagine what else can you cook? Like, because that's hard.
Well, I made wedding cakes.
Oh, okay. So wait. Okay, wait. So your cooking is in a different level. I thought that it was like something that. Okay, so tell me about that.
So the first wedding cake I made was for my sister. Since people in my family know I bake, um, they know I'm capable of doing this and
Okay.
pulling this out. So my sister asked me to make her wedding cake.
How long was
Um,
it? Like
it
how
was in
tall?
2016. How tall it was? It was a three-tiered cake. So it was for
Holy
100 guests.
moly!
Yeah. And I had never done a wedding cake before. I had baked several cakes. I had decorated cakes before. But that was definitely the biggest project I had done so far. And it was fun. I mean, took a really long time, but it was fun. And yeah, the process was just like trying to gather all the materials I needed, to like hold the structure together. I looked at a lot of tutorials online on how to like place each cake on top of each other,
Yeah.
making sure that it stays stable and so on. So, but it wasn't that hard to find all the instructions. Harder to like um, put this into practice, but not hard into finding the information I needed.
Did you had to do multiple tries, or did you wing it at first?
Yeah, I had at least two trials before
Okay.
making the final product.
Wow.
First of all, for the flavor, and then the second part was
For
making
the
sure
actual
that,
format.
yeah.
Wow. You're speaking like that as if it's not a superpower. Like doing a wedding cake is considered a superpower, probably. At least by my standards, it has to be. Uh, what's your favorite dish to make? Like eclair, you mentioned eclairs was the first one. Is still that like the favorite one, or you have any other specialty?
In terms of baking, um, yeah, I would say that that's my favorite one for sure. At For a few years, I was very obsessed with making macaron.
Hmm.
Like, and that's yeah, that was something I really liked making too. Just getting to explore like the different colors and different flavors I could,
Flavors, yeah.
yeah.
What
And
was your favorite flavor? Sorry,
for
for the
macaron,
macaron.
what's my favorite flavor? I'm pretty sure the one that had the best flavor I've made was something with passion fruit and mango. Yes, it
Mm.
was a passion fruit mango macaron.
Mm. That
Hmm.
has to be good. Like I'm craving sweets right now. Yeah, I think the best macaron that I had. So I went to France and I had them there in a couple of places, and they're just delicious. Um, Still, I once tried a macaron they made by this old baker in Portugal. And he had lived in France for a long time, so he made this blueberry one, and that was like a transformative experience. Like I still remember everything about that macaron. That was just great, and it's interesting because now that I'm thinking about, like, I know what an eclair is. I've seen them in a bunch of places, but I don't think I've ever had one. On I need to, after our interview, I need to go and actually eat one, because I'm just coming to that realization by myself. Okay, Gregory, I don't need you judging me. Okay, I know that you've been doing it since you're 14, but then I just realizing that I don't think I've ever had an eclair. I need to solve that. Like, okay, I'll go. And
Did
then
you
the
solve that
first
problem?
time, I'll send you a picture saying, "Well, this is the one that I'm tasting." Uh, but yeah, okay. So let's go back to comics. You So basically, if like cooking is like this passion of yours, it made sense that you're like basically doing comics about it. Is
Hmm.
there any, like, can you give us a little bit of a preview of like some of the stories, or like some of the dishes or foods that you talk about in the book?
Yeah, so there's a lot of stories about Mauritian food. So all the There's one story about Chinese Mauritian cakes. The reason why I wrote that story is that I wanted to show that, those are the cakes that my grandmothers made, and the recipes that they followed in their heads. Like I have never noted them down, and I still enjoy making them every year. But I also realized that it's also an acquired taste. So I actually really love them. But when I make my friends try them, they find it a bit weird.
Mm,
So that's the thing. Like I still make them for myself, but not for my friends because my friends don't really enjoy them as much as I
mm,
do.
yeah.
So that's one. And the other one is about another Mauritian dessert. It's a dessert that's made with cornmeal and coconut.
Okay.
Um, so it's called poutine mai, which is corn pudding in English. And I really love that dessert. But so when I first arrived in Montreal, I actually made it for a potluck. But then I realized that no one liked it. So
For you.
yeah, Yeah, so that was kind of sad. So those are two examples of stories I wrote for my book.
Got it. Yeah, it's so interesting that you're.
Mhm.
It's like because it's almost like it's still like those short stories, kind of like little assholes where you're talking about like your own experiences, but they're extremely related with food, basically. So I'm
Yeah.
guessing that the kind of vibe and aesthetics is still the same, like awesome, cute, but
Mhm.
focused on food. Well, I love that idea.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Focus on food and also like it's more like stories inspired by food. So you mentioned the little
mm,
hassles. Yeah, it's still little hassles in general and stories about life. Um, but they're all inspired by a specific food item.
got it. Got it. Okay.
Mm.
Well, so this so is the book already finished? Like, have you is it done? People can buy it, or are you like still editing? What's the process in that?
So I'm actually I have a deadline currently. My deadline is this
Okay.
Friday.
Okay.
Um,
So when
it's my
people
own
are listening
deadline.
to this, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've been working a lot on my book for the past couple of weeks. And the reason why I have a deadline, I'm actually imposing it on myself. It's just that I really want to publish it by the end of the year. It's a book
Mm,
I've been working on for 3 years, and it can go on forever because I'm constantly inspired by food. And I
yeah.
have so many more stories in mind, so my book can actually be much longer than it actually is. So people can't buy it yet, but it will be available soon.
Yeah.
I'm also more focused on the French version currently.
Mm,
And right after I'm done with the French version, I'll start translating
to English.
the
Okay.
rest. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Well, hopefully, when this episode airs, people can already buy at least the French version, so they
Hmm.
can go there and do that. That's great. So you mentioned hosting, and I know that we're going all over the place, but that's the beautiful thing about conversations. You mentioned hosting, like that you enjoy hosting with your friends. Um,
Hmm.
that was something that I always thought that I would enjoy, but I wasn't so sure. And then when I got a gnome, I realized that I love it as well. So, and I even read a book called "How to Host a Dinner Party." I don't remember the author. Like, but it was like I was once again it related with food. So my meticulous mindset was like, I need to be meticulous. Like, okay, so these are the rules. People need to go at this time. There's a couple of drinks that have to be there. There's a couple of places that they
Hmm.
could put their coats. Like all of these in session, and of course most of the times it everything fall through the cracks and nothing happened exactly the way I was thinking about, which is great. But I guess my question is, what made you um like wanting to start hosting these events or hosting people at your place?
Um, I think it started with because I had a really big interest in board games when I was in university.
Okay,
And then
what board games were you
my
playing?
oh, a lot of them. My favorite board game is called Caverna. It's a game by Ove Rosenberg, and it's a game where you actually build a cavern and a farm. You'll actually
Okay,
have a family of dwarves, and you're just building your little farm and
okay,
upgrading your house.
okay,
So yeah, it's a worker placement game where you actually like physically like place your worker on an action, take that action, and that action does something like build build a room.
okay,
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the my favorite games. The other game I played a lot in university was Seven Wonders. That's a
haven't heard.
game about the seven wonders of the world. It's a
Okay,
deck building game where you have cards and you just pass cards around and just keep playing cards and trying to get the most optimized
okay, deck
wonder.
and yeah.
So there were the board games. So what I would usually do is being like, well, I want to host a board game night, but I want people to have food as well. So it'd be both a board game night and a food night.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into that, and it was a way for me to always to have an excuse to see my friends as well, because I love. seeing my friends.
Yeah, that's definitely a part of it, right? It's always 'cause people are always busy doing something, and I don't know about you, but like a lot of times I say, well, we should grab a coffee, and or people tell me we should grab a coffee. Like, yeah, of course we should next week, okay, yeah, and then never gets done.
Never
Whereas if
happens.
you're
Yeah.
saying like, where
Yeah.
if we're saying like, well, Thursday night I'm hosting a dinner, come, it's like, okay, well, it's a little bit more like it's slightly more serious, and it has a date, it has a couple of things like people understand that you're actually putting some effort into it by making food, by preparing the board, by preparing the games, and so people eventually end up joining, and it's great. And yeah, one of the things that I love about that is just the conversations, even before like the because we've played board games as well. Like I've we have a couple of games that we enjoy playing, and recently we started playing like Dungeons and Dragons, which is also like it's I don't know if you heard of it. Okay, you know it. Have you ever played
Mhm.
it?
No, I've never played it.
Okay.
But I know it's a really great way to gather a lot of people together
Yeah,
every
that's the
week.
fun part.
Also.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the fun part. Like you have almost like this weekly excuse to meet with friends and just hang out, which
Yeah.
is great. And so, and that's definitely part of it. I also love the fact that you like once again I love conversations, and I have this idea that I feel like food is an enhancement of good conversations because when you're eating, it's almost like you're relaxed because you're enjoying your food. Hopefully, you're enjoying your food. You're enjoying like your drinks, and so and because of it, I feel like there's this environment that just facilitates like sharing good ideas and having like more deep conversations, which is something that I also absolutely love.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, that was just my own experience hosting dinners with friends.
Yeah, I agree. And whenever I host people, I always think about what would make me comfortable to begin with.
Yeah,
Whether it's good food, good drinks, music, how the place is set up. So I always think about how I would feel and how I would like the place to be if I'm at
yeah,
someone else's place.
yeah. That's great. Well, Gregory, this was fun. I really enjoyed it. Like it's interesting to know. Like it's always fun to talk with people that have like all of these myriad different things that they enjoy. Like we talked about comics and food and board games and all of that. And I feel like a lot of times people are only focused on one thing, which is great. I love having conversations about one thing, but I also like love these kinds of conversations where we go everywhere
Hmm.
all at once. So thank you for that. If people want to connect with you, follow you, buy your books, like what's the best place that they can do so?
You can follow me on pretty much every social media platform, Twitter, Instagram. I have a personal website as well.
Mhm.
And if anyone wants to talk, you can always shoot me an email or DM me. I'm always glad to meet new people.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely leave the links in the description so people can follow you. And well, Gregory, thank you so much. This was wonderful, and I hope to talk with you soon. Okay,
Yeah, thank you so much
bye
for having
bye.
me. Great.
You're welcome. To everyone watching, if you enjoy the podcast, leave a review in your favorite podcast platform. We appreciate it. Maybe share it with your friend. Okay, thank you guys. Bye bye.